Welcome to the Synopsis. In this series, we bring you books in brief, short summaries of the greatest books of our time that you've always wanted to read. In the next few minutes, we'll discuss what makes these books so influential.
Money makes the world spin, but ideas? That is where the real treasure lies. And in our world today, I think one of the most visible manifestations of interesting ideas lie in startups. A startup is literally an idea coming to life. Some of the biggest companies in the world today started off as startups, and the core ideas that drive these companies have revolutionized the way we live, right? So it's worth taking a look at how this all happens, and that brings me to today's book on Synopsis. Welcome, folks. I'm Ahalya, and today we're taking a look at a book called 0 to 1 Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. This one is one of the most insightful books written by a Silicon Valley mogul about startups. Who's the author in question? Well, I'm not sure if you ever heard his name. I mean, he's quite the underdog. Just kidding. 0 to 1 Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future is written by Peter Thiel, a legend in Silicon Valley and a very interesting individual. He became prominent as one of the co-founders of PayPal, but he's also a longtime innovator and venture capitalist going back more than 2 decades. In fact, he built a team that is sometimes referred to as the PayPal Mafia, and this group actually sold PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion back in 2002. Since that famous sale, the members of that team went on to other successful ventures. You may have heard of a few of them. No, seriously, PayPal Mafia is the perfect term. One of the members of this mafia is a gentleman by the name of Elon Musk. Ever heard of him? He's the face of SpaceX and Tesla. Then there's Reid Hoffman, who co-founded this very small, unknown company called LinkedIn. And then 3 other guys from that bunch, the PayPal Mafia, Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and Javed Karim, founded YouTube. It's not surprising that all those companies today are worth several $billion. Peter Thiel, well, he did pretty well for himself too. In 2020, he racked up a net worth of $2.3 billion. In 2014, Thiel released the book 0 to 1 Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future, where he discusses his unique approach to business. Surely unique is an accurate description since he's managed to do what very few others have. In the book, he explains how he tries to gauge the future and what he considers the markers of a successful future for any startup. So let's dive right into these ideas, because they're definitely valuable. The first one being innovation is the future. So Peter Thiel says most people believe that globalization is the future, but he believes that technology matters much more. In a world where resources are becoming scarce, globalization without new technology becomes unsustainable. To innovate in this field, sustainability, startups become crucial. Thiel says a startup is the largest group of people one can convince of a plan to build a different future. Speaking of startups in that culture, as well as the guidelines they follow, the dot-com crash in the early 2000s taught us a few important lessons. 1, advances must be incremental. 2, companies must stay lean and flexible. 3, companies must improve on the competition. And 4, businesses must focus on products, not sales. But then Thiel notes that the opposite is quite valid as well and believes that there are 4 other lessons every startup must imbibe. 1, it's better to risk boldness than triviality. 2, a bad plan is better than no plan. 3, competitive markets destroy profits. And 4, sales matter as much as products. Moving on to the second idea that Thiel discusses in his book, competition as a destructive force. Thiel says something really interesting, right? He says, if you can recognize competition as a destructive force instead of a sign of value, you're already more sane than most. He gives the example of U.S. airlines. U.S. airlines served millions of passengers and they created hundreds of billions of dollars of value every year. However, they earned just 37 cents per passenger trip, or 1/3 of a dollar. At the same time, Google had a profit margin 100 times higher than the entire airline industry. But how are those two related and what does it mean? Well, Thiel says that having competition means your company might find itself in a situation where there will be no capital left for it. So to get a larger share of the pie, a company needs to be a monopolist and beat the competition. Now, the word monopoly has definitely gained a bad rap, and some of it well-deserved, but Thiel contends that such thinking would hold true only in a world where nothing ever changed or improved. In the world we live in, it is possible to invent newer and better things. In fact, that is what drives today's global economy. Thiel claims that creative monopolists offer more choices by introducing new products. Another interesting point that Thiel touches upon in the book is the idea of a business versus a startup. So when Twitter went public in 2013, it was valued at $24 billion, right? That's 12 times higher than the New York Times market cap. Twitter was losing money while the New York Times earned $133 million in the same financial year. So why exactly is it that startups then have such crazy valuations? The short answer, cash flow. This is different for high-growth startup companies compared to low-growth businesses. Startups will usually turn profitable in the future, so their main metric is growth. One big mistake that entrepreneurs commit is that they focus on growth while ignoring sustainability. Thiel believes that every business must ask itself a very important question. Will your business still be here 10 years from today? Now, speaking of monopolies, Thiel also gives his take on how we can actually go about building them. So let me ask you this. What are the traits of companies with large cash flows far into the future? Thiel believes there are 4 main characteristics here. The first is proprietary technology. The second is network effects, aka virality. The third is simple scalability. And fourth, branding. Good growth, according to Thiel, takes 2 things. First, start small and monopolize. Second, don't disrupt. Thiel claims that directly challenging large competitors will be disastrous for a new entrant's profits. Remember that whole Napster versus the US recording industry fight? On the other hand, Thiel claims PayPal took some cash away from Visa overall, but it also gave Visa more business in return. So I guess what he's really trying to say is play smart and don't make enemies out of the people who could be your friends. Then he shifts the conversation to another side of the startup world, which is startup foundations. So Thiel has a list of requirements that he examines as an investor looking at startups. The first requirement is that you must know the co-founders before the business. Second, you must understand 3 concepts. Ownership, who legally owns a company's equity. Possession, who runs the company's day-to-day affairs. And control. Who is it that formally governs the company's affairs? Another requirement that Thiel looks at is the board of directors should not exceed 5 people in size. Thiel believes 3 is the ideal number here. The next requirement, every employee must be full-time, no exceptions. And last, Thiel claims that the lesser the salary of the CEO, the more it incentivizes the CEO to work towards long-term value. Thiel also believes that startups must cultivate a strong culture in their teams because that helps employees work together effectively. And he's very quick to say that a company's culture does not mean a pool table or a coffee machine. It is the quality of relationships and friendships that people develop while working together. For instance, PayPal was a good example of a strong company culture. The team was so close that many of them went on to start new companies together. I mean, if you think about it, you're not going to start a company with someone you don't like, so that's a pretty solid example. The next area of interest that Thiel talks about is sales. Thiel says Silicon Valley's tech guys underestimate the role of sales. Why? Because, well, when they see sales guys laughing on a phone call or going out for long lunches, they just assume that no work is being done. They believe if the product is good enough, it will sell itself. Thiel says this assumption is almost always incorrect. He insists that startups need to learn sales and talks about some core ideas that can help. The first, understand that salesmen are actors. Their priority is persuasion, not sincerity. Second, shady salesmen are bad salesmen. And third, Thiel says the customer lifetime value, or CLV, must be higher than CAC, customer acquisition cost. He also warns startup companies, everybody sells. Don't underestimate sales. Now, the next conversation that Thiel sparks in the book is perhaps the most difficult one, but also the most revealing one. He actually lists 7 very pertinent questions that every business needs to answer. So let's start with number 1, which is engineering. The question is, can your company create breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? The second question, timing. Is this the right time to start your particular business? The third is the monopoly question. Is your company starting off with a big share of a small market? The fourth question has to do with people. Does your company have the right team? The fifth question has to do with distribution. Do you have a way of not just creating, but also delivering your products? The sixth speaks of durability. Will your market position be defensible 10 years into the future? What about 20 years? And finally, perhaps the most important question, the secret question. Has your company identified a unique opportunity that others do not see? Thiel estimates that innovative companies achieve great results when they can answer 6 or 7 of these questions correctly. No pressure or anything. And finally, Thiel tackles a question that has been on many of our minds. Are tech companies like monarchies? Apple's value depended on the vision and drive of one individual, Steve Jobs. Same thing with Tesla and Elon Musk. Thiel claims innovative, cutting-edge companies resemble monarchies rather than organizations that are thought to be more democratic. He says a unique founder can make authoritative decisions, inspire loyalty, and plan decades into the future. On the other hand, companies that are like bureaucracies may last longer than many people's lifetimes, but they act with much shorter time horizons. What interested me the most about this book is that in today's flexible, ever-changing, dynamic world, whether you work at a startup or a well-established, old-school organization, there's something to take from these ideas. So I hope you find value from today's synopsis. That was me, Ahalya, with a summary of 0 to 1, Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future by Peter Thiel on this edition of Synopsis.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Synopsis, powered by Timber Media.